Aries full moon cycle, which is taking place, as I say, on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, Tuesday. It's taking place at 27 degrees in Aries. So anyone who has placements in their birth chart at around about 20, 26, 27, 28 degrees of Aries, even 29 degrees of Aries, will have those placements directly activated by the Aries cycle, the moon cycle. But everyone, and the whole planet, and all of humanity, and all nations, and all leaders and governments, etc., will automatically be activated by the Aries energy when it comes through. Now, what Aries does, because it starts off the astrological year, so the actual astrological year only begins when the sun moves into the first sign of the zodiac, which is Aries, which is March 21st. And then the height, or the most potent, direct, streamlined energy of Aries only comes into the planet at the full sun moon cycle of Aries. So
okay.
The monthly cycle of Aries is when the Aries energy comes through in a normal, diffused fashion, but when it's the full moon cycle, then it comes through in a very streamlined, intense, focused fashion.
Yes.
So that's why full moon cycles are people get very sort of anxious and sometimes tired, and sometimes, people feel as if everything is focused and concentrated and very uncomfortable because that energy is coming through in a streamlined fashion.
Yeah.
And what happens in Aries is that the new ideas, the new inspirations, the new visions, the new concepts, the new projects, the new activities, the new unfoldments for the new astrological year come through into people's consciousness. Because Aries is concerned with ideas. In other words, it's a sign of the new ideas. And there's an old saying which says, there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or everything starts with an idea. Like, I don't know how many people realize it. Nothing starts without an idea.
Mm.
The idea comes first, and then everything else manifests as a consequence of the idea. That's not just personally. That's actually cosmically. That's actually like the creation of planets starts with an idea. The creation of the solar system starts with an idea. And the creation of a planet, the creation of a nation starts with an idea, and so on. Everything starts with an idea, and those ideas come through on the Aries full moon cycle every year. The difference between this cycle is that this is not just coming through for the new astrological year, which unfolds over 12 cycles,
right?
So 12 astrological months. This is coming through for the actual age of Aquarius.
The next 2,000 years, in other words.
Yeah, this is the seeding of the impulses, the ideas, the vision, the understanding, the knowledge, the activities, the forms, the structures that will be the seed or the foundation of what we call the new age of Aquarius. As the old, with Jupiter, Neptune conjunction in Pisces, starts to accelerate and intensify in terms of its dissolution and collapse and breakdown, so the new will come in just as intensely. And so people will feel both. And the result will be that either people start getting very anxious and fearful and afraid and confused and start tracking back, going back to the past to try and get some safety from the past, but there's no safety in the past because the whole thing is collapsing. So to retreat back to the past doesn't help anyone. You have to move forward into the future. Even though none of us can see the future that clearly, or know exactly what's going to happen, or know exactly what we can do or should do to serve the future, if we are just conscious over the Aries full sun moon cycle, the sort of 3-4 days, which unfolds, then we will get, what each person gets from their soul, the particular ideas or inspirations or understanding that is particularly to them in terms of what they have to do.
Perfect.
Right?
Mm.
And so it's good for people to have a book and a pen.
Yeah.
Because often those ideas and inspirations can come through very quickly, like, sort of like a lightning flash from the soul, and you have to put it down quickly so that you remember it. All right? So that can include projects, activities or projects that people should do. And the thing starts with an idea. You see that every project or activity starts with an idea. And these will be new ideas. So these will not be like ideas that people have had before or have accomplished or fulfilled before. These will be new ideas, brand new ideas that are coming through.
Very exciting, Errol.
So they're coming through, they're coming through from the collective soul of humanity and from the individual soul of people. And the collective soul and the individual soul, of course, are all interconnected. And all souls know the divine plan. So every single soul who is an immortal being knows the divine plan and knows the divine plan for their individual human self, which is us, of course, and transmits that to us via ideas and inspirations and deep understanding and dreams and so on, which we then have to grasp and hold. There's a saying which is hold the vision or hold the idea. Don't let it go, because if you let go of the idea, then it goes back into abstraction. It goes back where it came from. You have to hold it. And often the thing about ideas, you see, is they are abstract. That's the problem with ideas. Ideas are abstract. They're not concrete as yet. And sometimes, and it's not always, new ideas sound really weird. They sound kind of, I got this idea. And most people will say, like, you're really crazy. You can't mad.
Yeah, it's not logical what you're saying.
What a crazy idea. You know what I mean? Start something called Apple and create computers and smartphones from this idea of what you call Apple, which would be your company, and you're going to do this and that. You're crazy. Forget about it. That idea, probably with Steve Jobs, who got that idea initially, and then he brought that idea into manifestation, and what we got was his inspiration coming from his soul, which was eventually, of course, smartphones, etc., which, of course, changed the whole world for the better and for the worse, obviously. But when you get an idea and you bring it through, anyone who locks into the idea or into the project, that's their responsibility if they're going to use that for the good or for the bad.
Yeah.
If they're going to abuse it or use it for constructive purposes. So, you can't sort of say, Steve Jobs did a terrible thing by revealing or bringing through this idea of, smartphones.
Sure.
That was his purpose. He did it. It's fantastic. Many people abuse it. Other people use it constructively. And it's not Steve Jobs' responsibility. It's every human being's responsibility. So, but everyone has something to do based upon that idea. It won't be as big as a Steve Jobs idea. It won't be as big as a Microsoft idea. It won't be as big as an Nelson Mandela idea. It won't be as big as a Mikhail Gorbachev idea, or an Einstein idea, or a William Blake idea. But whatever it is what we have to do. And we don't sort of see it in terms of, being small or medium. Therefore,
well, I was going to say, it's big for everybody and it's all relative, Yeah, but the thing is that what you're saying is, convert that potential energy into kinetic energy, manifest.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's you see, the thing is when you get an idea which is on the mental plane, you have to bring it through the emotional plane, which means it hits your emotional body and it activates various emotions as it comes into the emotional body, which is, for instance, fear or insecurity. Like, I can't do that. I'm not qualified to do that. I'm not able to do that. I'm not courageous enough to do that. It'll never work. That's when it hits the emotional body. They have to bring it through them, not allow it to go back into abstraction because of your emotional stuff. And then it comes into the physical plane, and you have to get involved with organization, finance, structures, forms, connectivity with other people who are involved with that idea at the group level, which is in itself work, obviously. It's all work. If you think of the first time you got the idea to do what you're doing, right?
I knew it. It was electric. It wasn't maybe.
Yeah.
It was defined, definite. I couldn't shake it off. You can't shake it off. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, but a lot of people do shake it off. A lot of people do let it go because of their insecurities, their fears, their sense of lack of finance, for example. For instance, a lot of projects don't work because the person who's doing it says they haven't got enough money to make the project work. But of course, if you keep moving with an idea and bring it into manifestation, and you work out how much money you need, and using your common sense and your practicality, and decide you need whatever it might be, 20,000 rand, 50,000 rand, 10,000 rand for bringing that idea into manifestation, and you hold, the money will manifest.
And the money goes further. That was the thing that I found most interesting, that things didn't have to cost as much as you thought they would cost. It just went further. It was incredible. But you know, Errol, just while you're talking, what I'm thinking about so strongly is this caterpillar, the cocoon, and the butterfly. So I think, you know, literally and figuratively more. So what you're saying is, so you the caterpillar now, you're spinning that cocoon. You can't really unspin it. You can try, but or otherwise you just stay in that caterpillar form. And I mean, nowhere in nature does the caterpillar stay. The caterpillar knows what's happening and it moves. It knows it's got to spin the cocoon. It's got to then form its wings, metamorphosize, eat its way out of that old cocoon and start flying. So there's no hesitation there. With nature, it knows what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, the caterpillar and the butterfly, of course, is an ageless wisdom story of symbology for humans, of course. And I think what's happening the last 2.5 years is that humans have gone into the caterpillar stage. They've been forced into the caterpillar stage. Of course, when you're in the caterpillar, everything's dark. Yeah. Everything's dreary. Everything's small. It's like you're in a kind of prison, if you want to call it that, a dark prison. And you can't see anything out of the prison except the darkness that you're enfolded in. And that's also, you see your ugliness, you see your caterpillar nature, which is part of the shadow and part of what you have to experience in the caterpillar stage. And the last 2.5 years of the pandemic has been forcing humans into caterpillar stage. Yep. So they have to go through that, because you can't become a butterfly until you become a caterpillar, if you see what I mean.
Absolutely.
People think they can become butterflies before they become caterpillars.
Nope.
You know? You can't. You have to go to the caterpillar stage. And then you come out eventually in perfect timing, or in right timing, or divine timing, of the caterpillar stage, and you in your butterfly stage, which is in your soul, your freedom, your soul, your vocational work. Because vocation is different to career. Career means what you do to make money. Yeah. And vocation means what you do to serve the divine plan. A very different. Vocation comes from Latin vocate. It means to serve the totality. So,
but you're serving within your passion, within your purpose. So it's joy. It's pure joy what you're doing, and that I think becomes, you know, collective space, and the more joy you receive and experience, the more joy you can give out. And so we got to be, I think, as you said, we all here to do something. It's our purpose and our passion. Yeah. And then what's the result of all of that is, as I said, it's joy, you know?
Yeah, I mean, even a kind of ecstasy in a way.
Very much so. There are no words. There are no words for it. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think what's happening perhaps now with the Jupiter Neptune conjunction in Pisces is that this is, and as we move into the Aries full moon, which just follows, of course, which is very interesting, because this conjunction in Pisces is occurring just 2 days, 4 days before the Aries full moon. So this is like a quick death and rebirth. and a quick, perhaps a movement collectively from the caterpillar stage for tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of people, into the butterfly stage. And of course, all butterflies are unique. Every single butterfly has a different pattern, a different color, and so on and so on. And this will come through the Aries cycle, so people should be very well aware of it. That's on a kind of personal basis and a partnership basis and a group basis and even a network, global network basis, and impossible for us to see because obviously we can't see what's happening with tens, hundreds of millions of people, maybe even billions of people. We can't see what's happening collectively because we don't have that sight. Of course, the superhuman kingdom does have that sight and can see what's happening with the collective, but we can't do that. All we can do is just focus upon what we've got to do, or what we have to do as a couple, or what we have to do with our small group of friends or our network, and do what we are called to do.
Yeah.
And, gradually be able to see what other people have been called to do. And then probably we start meeting or connecting people that are doing other things which are connected to what we're doing and vice versa. And they start to cooperative, co-creative process. And that's all part of the magic.
Correct.
The different butterflies get together and they start flying together and working together with whatever their group project might be. So that's what is going to happen and is about to happen, whether people are aware of it consciously or whether people are unconscious of this process. I mean, the other thing about it, of course, I have quite a few, and we both have quite a few Christians who are part of our network. Some of them are fundamentalist Christians too. They have had their astrological charts done by me, even though their church forbids it. So they're told that, astrology is the work of the devil, but they come to have the charts done with me because when they're going through trauma and pain and suffering, they'll come to the astrologer or the psychologist. They won't listen to the priest in terms of their church. And of course, that's all nonsense to say that, astrology is part of the devil. Since Jesus had 12 disciples, why 12? 12 signs of the zodiac. Socrates had 12 disciples, why 12? 12 signs of the zodiac.
Sure.
And of course, Jesus even prophesied that because the disciples of Jesus, of course, in the catacombs of Rome, used to draw the sign of the two fishes, which is the sign of Pisces. When the disciples came to Jesus and said, when will you return? He said, if you go into the city, you'll see a water bearer. Saying to them, I'll return when the sign of the water bearer comes into manifestation, which would be in 2,000 years' time, which is now. The sign of the water bearer, the sign of the water carrier. So Jesus knew about astrology. Of course, the three wise men that came to see Jesus when he was born were all astrologers. This is historical fact. This is not even a kind of myth. They were all astrologers. Chaldean astrologer, Babylonian astrologer, Egyptian astrologer. And since they came to witness and be part of the birth of the avatar of the age of Pisces, they must have told Mary, his mother, a lot of stuff, a lot of astrological stuff, which she passed on to Jesus. And that's where Jesus gained his initial astrological knowledge from the three wise magicians who were all astrologers. So, when Christians say astrology is a sign of the devil, I mean, really, it's such a stupid statement. But anyway, so what happens now, just in terms of the interesting of the Jewish Passover, which I talked about, and then you get the Christian celebration of resurrection. The problem with what Christians do is that they are celebrating the so-called resurrection of Jesus. So Jesus was crucified, it happens tomorrow, of course, and then 3 days later, he rose and was resurrected, quote unquote, as Christians interpret it. Which, of course, there's a very simple interpretation to that, because simplicity is always the easiest way to look at this thing. For 3 days, Jesus was crucified. His entire personality, not just his body, was crucified. His ego was crucified. So 3 is mental, emotional, physical. So he wasn't just physically crucified. His emotional body was crucified. His lower mental body was crucified, which is the ego. And after he'd been to the crucifixion, it was time to leave his body. and enter into his soul, his immortal self, and he was resurrected, because all souls are immortal. Therefore, all souls are resurrected. Therefore, we are all immortal souls. Therefore, we are all resurrected. But what we have to discover is what that means to be resurrected, to be an immortal soul. So it has nothing to do with Jesus' resurrection. In fact, Jesus does not want people to celebrate his resurrection, because his teaching was to say to people, you've got to discover your immortality, and you've got to discover your resurrection. Forget about me.
Yeah, it was an example to us.
Exactly.
The way I see it.
I'm doing the teaching to save you. I'm not interested in me. I'm not self-centered. If I'm a master of the wisdom, I'm not self-centered. I don't want people to focus upon me. Focus upon yourself.
Yep.
Focus upon your own enlightenment and your illumination. Focus upon crucifying your own ego. You know, your selfishness, your self-centeredness, your greed, your avariciousness, your envy, blah, 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 etc. That's what you have to crucify. That's the old. And you have to come into the new, which is to recognize your resurrected self, your immortal soul. And your vocation, which is the way you express that into the world and serve the divine plan as a natural consequence of that. Mm. So that's why you have this Passover, resurrection, and Aries full sun moon cycle all occurring at the same time. Although the Jews don't understand that, the Christians don't understand that, because they're still looking outwards to authorities, human authorities, who tell them, who don't know what they're talking about, and just brainwash them in the normal sense. So each person has to stop looking at you. That's another thing of Pisces, or the old way. Stop looking to outside authorities for anything, political, economic, religious, media, etc. You must establish your own sense of authority from within yourself, and look from within out, not from out within. And then you're in the new. Then you come into the age of Aquarius, then you come into your saving grace, then you come into being saved, because that's what being saved is. I mean, if you're immortal, then you're saved. It's like that simple. If I'm an immortal soul, I'm saved. That's what the resurrection means. It's got nothing to do with synagogues and churches and priests and rabbis and history. It's got to do with mystery. You know, so you have to give up history and take up the mystery, and then you come into your resurrected self and into your life vocation, into your life purpose, and so on and so on and so on. And that's what's happening right now in a very peak way, and that's going to unfold through the Aries full moon cycle, which is when the first impact, then the Taurus full sun moon cycle in May 16th, which is the second impact, and then the Gemini full sun moon cycle the 14th of June, which is the third impact. And in the third impact, it starts coming more into the living process, into your actual communication, your sharing, your activities, your creativity, and so on and so on and so on. And then it comes into the Cancer cycle, which is the fourth impact, which is in July. That's when it anchors into the physical plane. That's when you start bringing it into the physical world. Yeah. So that's how it happens. And there might be even more that occurs in terms of that, because the appearance of the avatar of Aquarius, because every single new age always begins when a spiritual initiate appears, who represents that energy of the zodiacal cycle, as Moses, Aries, Jesus, Pisces, Hermes, Taurus, etc. And they give off the teaching or the message, which is the core teaching, if you want to, of the astrological agents coming into manifestation. So this has always happened throughout history, and every 2,000 years or so. So this will be occurring again, except this time it will be the avatar of Aquarius. And the interesting thing about what's happening at the moment is that the Tibetan master Dwalkul predicted, and he's the master of the wisdom, that the avatar of Aquarius would appear on a Gemini full sun moon cycle, which is 14th of June. So there's a strong possibility that avatar is coming in June, in the Gemini full moon cycle. And when that happens, when the avatar appears, then everything changes, because once the avatar anchors its energy into the physical plane, and everyone will see his presence, and everyone will hear his teaching, his message, then we really are, quote unquote, now into the new age of Aquarius, and the old age is kaput, finished. So that might well be happening this year, 2022. So that's not that, as I often say to people, the avatar of Aquarius is not coming to save humanity, it's coming to give the teaching, which enables people to save themselves.
Yeah.
See, that's very different. The other big difference is because Aquarius is a sign connected with the collective humanity, all of humanity. It's the water carriers.
Nice.
It's global consciousness.
Yeah.
It's the brotherhood and sisterhood of humanity, which is very different to Pisces, very different to Aries ages.
Yeah.
Because in those ages, you had them focus in particular nations or races or religion. This is for all of humanity. And so what the Christians and the Jews and the Muslims, etc., do not understand is that this avatar is not coming for the Christians or the Jews or the Muslims or the Hindus or the Buddhists. This avatar is coming for all of humanity, for 8 billion human beings.
Amazing.
Who will all see him and hear him because we have global technology.
Him,
now.
are you sure it's a him?
He will be appearing in a male body.
How do you know?
Because we know that. But it's not that he's appearing in a male body because anything to do with gender. Because the avatar has got no polarity. It's completely beyond polarity. But he had to choose to appear in a male body or a female body, and he happens to be appearing at this particular time in a male body. But his presence, his energy is beyond male or female. People won't feel that this is man or this is woman, but who is androgynous. His energy field is androgynous and has no particular masculine or feminine characteristics. But it would be physically in a male body, which is not of significance. It had to be in a male body or female body. So it just happens to be in a male body this time. But that's not of significance. I mean, no one's going to look at the Aquarius avatar of Aquarius, and say, God, this guy is man. This guy's got some heavy male characteristics. It's not going to be like that. His presence is totally, completely beyond any gender polarity, or any east or west polarity, or north or south polarity, and so on.
Well, that's good. All this is good.
And the teaching will be also, it will be not masculine or feminine, but just pure truth and pure wisdom, and provide the keys for what is becoming and will become the brotherhood and sisterhood of humanity, which all nations, all people will work together to create a type of planet and a type of humanity that we all know we need. And will replace the old separations and conflicts and racial separations, religious separations, national separations. And you can see what's happening now, for example, in Russia and Ukraine. I mean, we have a perfect example of what the old world represents. Here we have a group of people who are supposed to be leaders of our countries in the West, who are pushing an agenda, a dark, instigated agenda to try and break Russia up, and are doing it in a way which, if it was not for these circumstances which are changing, could well manifest as a third world nuclear war, which would annihilate humanity. And they're prepared to do that. They're prepared to actually foster that kind of potentiality in order to bring down Russia, because Russia will not cooperate with their world domination plan. The Russians and Chinese have basically told the Americans and the European Union, etc., we are not going to join the World Economic Forum. We are not joining you in order to become part of your world domination plan. We are independent nations. We don't want to give up our independence. And because they're refusing to join, the Americans especially and some of the European nations, etc., and Australia, for example, are attempting to break Russia by forcing it into this war with Ukraine, which gave Russia no option. Because when the Berlin Wall came down, Gorbachev and Bush Sr., who was then the president of the United States, made an agreement. And Gorbachev said to Bush Sr., I will withdraw all our troops from Eastern Central Europe back to Russia, but you must give me a guarantee that NATO will not expand eastward to surround Russia. Bush Sr. gave him that agreement. You can see it in a number of websites. It's there. And then Clinton came into power, George W. Bush came into power, Obama came into power. They broke the agreement and they started getting the East Central European countries to join NATO, and they started weaponizing them, giving them very powerful weapons to surround Russia. Putin said a whole number of times to the Americans and the Europeans, don't expand eastward and surround us, because we will not let you surround us with enemies and with weapons supplied by your military-industrial complex. They didn't listen. They didn't agree. So Putin had no other alternative but to invade Ukraine and stop the Ukrainians from joining NATO.
And so Errol, what you told me before is that I think it's Russia has Aquarius as their rising sign or something.